Cool. Perfect. Okay, guys. So today we are going to be talking about the development of the health and safety practitioner. So just by a show of hands, how many of you work in health and safety, or how many of you have got knowledge of, have got knowledge of health and safety itself? I'm going to try and do something. 1 second. So yeah, how many of you have got knowledge of health and safety in that particular context? So what do you know about health and safety as a practitioner? Because there's two different types. The development of a health and safety practitioner can somewhat be very intriguing and very interesting as well. And so that is what I will attempt to share with you today. But in case you didn't know, my name is Professor Ryan Osborne, and I'm one of the professors at the London School of International and Business. Yes, I am. So without further ado, let me get started. Okay. So let's move swiftly on. And so the agenda for today is, number one, we're going to be looking at the roles and responsibilities of health and safety practitioners. Number two, we are going to be assessing the organizational skills and competence requirements for health and safety practitioners. And last but not least, we're going to be looking at how we can produce a personal development in own area of responsibilities as a health and safety practitioner itself. So if we move swiftly forward, right. So first off, we can see that so number one, we're going to look at the roles and responsibilities of health and safety practitioners itself. So first of all, number one, health and safety practitioners, they have a whole range of tasks that they have to, do as practitioners themselves. So first of all, number one, well, in the chat, if you in the chat while we are going through, if you could think of any more, you can put them in the chat box as well. But health and safety practitioners, they have to do a lot of risk assessments. Now, why do we say they've got to do risk assessments? Because every day will not be the same. Every day is going to be different. And when you're a practitioner in the field, you need to understand that. So every day, you may turn up to work, and hypothetically, you may be in charge of a whole train station, and something calamitous happens. So part of your risk assessment is assessing the immediate risk, and then what about the risk afterwards, the more wider risk to the public. And then you'll have to consult with different other organizations about that exact risk. So that's one of the duties that they have. And so part of your risk assessment is, is actually looking at that risk assessment and deciding whether it's a high risk, whether it's a medium risk, whether it's a low risk as well. Do you have the resources to handle that risk? And if you don't, do you need to ask outside agencies to help you with that particular risk? But if you can deal with it in-house, that's the best option, right? Isn't it, guys? Now, the next thing is that you are going to need to communicate with employees about procedures and updated procedures as well. So off the top of my head, and you can, if you guys can think about some as well, put them in the chat box. You know, procedures could be a fire procedure, or it may be if there's been an accident in the building, what is the procedure for that particular accident? What is your procedure for reporting emergencies, or what is your procedure if a piece of equipment breaks down? However, if you now have to update those particular procedures, let's say, it's important you need to communicate with the employees, because 9 times out of 10, if you don't, there will be a miscommunication, and then there will be a wider implication for the business moving forward. Another thing that health and safety practitioners need to do is they have to create health and safety policies. Now, they do that by looking at the laws of the land, legislations, regulations, and guidelines. And through that, they'll be able to put together a policy that highlights everything that the laws, legislations, and regulations says. So the next thing is, they're going to also establish goals for health and safety as well. So what does that look in its context? So if you look at goals, they've got to look at where they are now. So what's their current procedure at this point? What do they want to achieve? And the timeline of what they want to achieve, and also how they are going to achieve it as well. And then they will set objectives and targets as well, so they can be able to hit those goals. And following on from that, what they also need to do is they need to review, they need to review the health and safety assessments and procedures as well. Because as you know, sometimes the government may change health and safety laws or legislations, or they may change regulations, or they may add in something else. So if they do that, then that means the health and safety practitioner needs to look at what the government has said, and then come back and review what they've currently got going on, and see where they can work it. Or the health and safety executive, let's say, have announced a new law or a new act or a new guideline. So that again will force the practitioner to come back and look at everything and then keep things moving forward. I hope that makes sense so far, guys. So the next, okay, let's go down here. Okay. Hold on. No, hang on. My laptop's gone a bit. It's gonna a bit doodally. Sorry, guys. Okay. Okay, I need to go back. Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay. Okay, yes. Okay. So if we now go back here, so question, so hang on, no, that's not, okay. Let me go back. Okay. Okay, that's not interesting. That's very interesting. So, so again, we will look at health and safety practitioners, and they will have certain conflicts as well. So in certain places there will be a lot of conflicts around health and safety. So in your job there may be potential conflicts such as working hours, system procedures and how it is processed, the monitoring of equipment as well. And sometimes there will be staffing and recruitment issues as well. So as a health and safety practitioner itself, you need to be able to handle those particular conflicts and handle those conflicts in a way which will help you understand it and will help you resolve that in, it'll help you resolve that in a timely manner. So here's the thing. From these conflicts, we would then begin to see why we need to create a positive health and safety environment. But the question is, how do we create it ourselves? So I think the first thing we need to do is to improve how we engage with our employees and how regular we are communicating with them as well. Because there's one thing to be engaging with your employees, so you may talk to them on a regular basis, but how often do you communicate with your employees, with your workers, with your supervisors? How often are you talking to them? Because if you want to create a good positive environment, then engagement and communication is very, very key. The next thing is ideally, in an ideal world, you would want to employ staff who are competent at what they do. Now, I'm sure most of you are on the course, so you can learn about health and safety and of course, be competent in health and safety. So when you go out into the world of health and safety, let's say now, you're fully backed. Like you've got the certification, and you've got the experience to prove that yes, I'm competent at my job. I know what I am doing. And so this is what any organization would look for. They would look for staff who are competent. So they are theoretically competent and they are practically competent as well at what they do. And the next thing about that is, ideally, you just want to keep the promises that you set. How many times have you been in a situation or in a environment where the boss has said, by June we're gonna have a certain things amount done, and then by June it comes and nothing is done. And sometimes this will cause the breakdown of communication in communication between yourself and the boss, because certain promises haven't been set. And when it comes to health and safety, it's really important that the employee goes out of their way to really keep the promises that they have set. Don't you agree, guys? Don't you agree? Okay, so the next thing we're going to be looking at now is we're going to be looking at organizational skills and competence. No, let's go back. So we're going to be looking at assessing organizational skills and competence requirements for health and safety practitioners. So if you remember in the previous slide, we talked about competence and why it's important for staff to be competent. So for any staff members, let's say, they it's important that that you assess the skills and the competence of the fellow health and safety practitioners. So practitioners could be anybody. So it could be employees, it can be workers, it can be managers, it can be executives, it could be contractors as well. Anybody that comes into the business that has something to do with health and safety, then we need to assess what skills they have first and whether they are competent enough to carry out their job. Why? Because when you are looking at all the skills required and, and you want to be deemed as competent in health and safety, you need to look at what skills the organization deemed that you need. And then you look at what you have, like what you have as well. And then you can see what gap there is in knowledge. So another idea is around management and leadership styles and communication skills. Some of you may be in management, some of you may be in leadership, or some of you may have an aspiration to go into management and leadership as well. But one thing we need to understand is that sometimes we need to do the training as well to get to a particular place where we can be considered management and leadership. And of course, there were different types of styles that you will come across in your journey within health and safety. And like we said previously as well, communication skills is another factor within the whole health and safety sector. And moving on, once you now have identified all those gaps in your knowledge and your skills, can you only then begin to identify how competent you are? So after you've looked at the organization that you work with, you've looked at the training plan, you've looked at, the job specification or your day-to-day responsibilities as well, and you've looked at what they deem you need to be competent, can you then begin to take up what you need to be a competent person? So let's now introduce another concept. Okay, right. So the next concept is training. Training. Now, this is why we're all here, right? We're all here on a health and safety course, level 6. And so the reality, the next step would be then to produce a training plan which will incorporate all the knowledge gaps that you yourself have identified, or when you have a meeting with your upline or your superior or your supervisor, or ideally the next person above you, you can then begin to formulate a plan. So you may be asking me, how does that work? I'll explain. So the training plan should ideally have the following things. So number one, it should have all the skills that you need to learn. So it could be communication skills. It could be your time management skills. It could be your writing skills. It could be your reporting skills. It could be, it could be like your skill to work under pressure. It could be, you've got a good eye for detail, etc., etc., etc. Then you would need to then identify a timeline of when the actual course is going to be finished by. Reason being is that when you're looking at a course and you're looking at your job, you need to look at, you know, how many hours you work, and then you need to look at how long the course is going to be. And then maybe if you can come to an agreement with the boss, or you can have some kind of agreement with the course leader, let's say, to say, I got work. And then you can ask your boss to give you some time off as well. And so the next thing would be, you know, to make a review of what has been learned. So you would meet on a regular basis to see what you have learned, what you have taken out from it, and how you think you can apply it to your own work. And that would then lead us to the implementation of those skills. So when you're really implementing those skills, that's when you can really bring to fore what you have learned and what that really means to you as well. And the very next thing is that you should always have ongoing training plans, because the thing with health and safety is that you're always going to be learning something different every day. Like I said at the beginning of the webinar itself, every day is a different day. You're not going to have a day that's always going to be the same, but that depends on your workplace, doesn't it? But normally, the more practical side of it, your day will be different to yesterday, and tomorrow may be different from today. So it's important that our training plans are ongoing. So sometimes it could be on the job training, or sometimes it will be class-based training, or sometimes they will give you online training, so you can do at your own pace. Okay, so we are now moving on to personal development itself. Let me just have a swig of coffee quickly. So we've looked at, so far we've looked at, you know, the development of the health and safety practitioner itself. And then we've also looked at, you know, like the different competencies, the different competency and the different skills that are required for a practitioner to be doing as well. So now we're going to be looking at personal development itself. What is needed as an individual in your role as a health and safety practitioner itself. So this part is all about the individual. It's all about you. And so this particular thing is all about, you know, you have to always undertake CPD. So CPD is continuous professional development. And as always, you must learn each day, every single day, because sometimes you will learn from your colleagues, you will learn from certain situations. And I will tell you that because theoretically, you may know everything up here in your mind. So you go to work, you know the fire exit, you know the accident procedure, you know the fire procedure, you know what to do if there was an explosion near your place of work, or you just know simple, basic, everyday health and safety stuff. But then what happens when things happen outside of your control? That's when you will learn how to maybe work under pressure. You may then learn how to work with other agencies outside of your own. And you then may begin to understand that sometimes I need to communicate with other people. So do you see how every day is a learning day? And also you must have the ability to reflect on those learnings. And also another crucial part of that as well, you have to reflect on your day-to-day working as well, because part of CPD is you look at what you've done at work on a day-to-day basis, and once you've identified what you have learned, you can look back on that, and normally that will fall under 3 different sections. So it will fall under, what do I feel I've done good today? So what are the things that I did good that I know that I can feel happy about? Then the second one, it could be, where do I need to improve on, let's say. So if you've successfully handled a health and safety situation at work, but it wasn't on point, you could then maybe go away and look at what happened in that particular situation itself, and just begin to ask yourself how you would have handled that better. And then after that, you can then make improvements. You can then give yourself bullet points of where you can improve and what you're going to do to make those things better. The next thing I want to talk about is very big. It's a very huge thing in all industries, especially health and safety. This part of the development is the idea of accountability. Now, the part of accountability is, I'd say, huge. Accountability, you know, people will normally ask, well, what is accountability? Do I have to do anything special to within accountability? And the answer is yes, at different levels. So a health and safety executive or manager, let's say, they will be accountable for their own actions, what they do on a daily basis. So in the health and safety situation, after it, or when they're compiling their report, they have to give an account of why they decided to do a certain procedure, or they decided to not do it, or they decided to pass it on to somebody else. They need to account for that and give their reasons why. Now, in other aspects, you yourself, as a health and safety professional, now, you also have to give account of your own actions and your own, you know, and your own decision making as well, because all of us, we all make choices. We all make choices, don't we? And we all make you know, and we all make our own decisions in life, don't we? So we will need to, at some stage, account for them, don't we, guys? And so when you now are accountable, it helps you with your development. But how do you be accountable? So you can be part of a group. And when you're part of a group, you can then what? You can share your personal reflections. You can share your personal reflections as well. And you can then, you know, still share with people what you have learned in your job, and how you think it may help other people in their job. Now, I'm not saying you have to have an accountability group in your own place of work. It could be with fellow health and safety professionals, let's say, so health and safety professionals in different areas or in your particular city of work. You can come together on a regular basis and within context, within reason, discuss what you think is important within health and safety, let's say. And guess what it does? In terms of your personal and professional development itself, it will build it and it will build it a lot more. And you know what? Accountability, it will help strengthen the bond that you have with your peers and colleagues. Now, another thing that I have come across around accountability myself is that, you know, in terms of being accountable itself, you also need to keep a written record of everything that you do. So everything that you have learned, everything that people have said with you, everything that you have, you know, everything that you have come across, everything that you have identified as well. Because then when you are now given an account of your own opinion, of your own situation as well, what it does, it will allow you and another friend to help keep you accountable. So if, let's say, you've decided to go on a communication course, if you've told somebody about it, if you've told somebody about it now, they can help keep you accountable. So you can meet on a regular basis. And also, if your boss knows about it as well, he can also help you in that aspect too, can't he? So let's now move swiftly on to the next stage. Okay, now we are down to goal setting and SWOT analysis as well. So a SWOT analysis is another area of development. How many of you have come across this particular concept before? How many are familiar with the SWOT analysis process? I'll also introduce a little hack for you as well. So a SWOT analysis, it stands for strengths, it stands for weaknesses, it stands for opportunities, and it stands for threats. But let's now flip it around. So you've got threats, you've got weaknesses, you've got opportunities, and you've got strengths. So what you're basically doing is you're assessing the individual at the places where they're not so strong in and where they may have a weakness. And then what you're doing, you're building up to their strengths and the opportunities as well. So you're eliminating the threats and the weaknesses by dealing with them. So if you identify a weakness as they may not have good reporting skills, or they may not have good writing skills or good English, let's say, you can then put together a plan to combat that, can't you? And if there's a threat against that, like there's a lack of funding, or they don't have time off work, you can then combat that particular idea, can't you? And then you've got the opportunities and strength. So the opportunities are, okay, so they can go to college to learn English. They could do it in-house. They could maybe take one day off work to attend college. And then that way they are winning at life because they're going to college and they are learning about English and they are making adjustment in their career, aren't they? So really and truly, that's a SWOT analysis, isn't it? And you know what that does, it will inform you as an individual, and it will analyze you as an individual of, you know, of yourself. And if you are a manager within health and safety as well, it is very key if you want to keep track of how your staff are performing and also how competent they are as well. Next thing is you want to be looking at ideally setting goals and how you can plan those goals as well. So let's go and dive into some goal setting and planning. So smart goal setting. So we've looked at we've looked at a SWOT analysis, and we said that a SWOT analysis, it helped give you an informed analysis about yourself as an individual. It also allows you to highlight your strengths, what you were good at, and then the weaknesses will allow you to see where you can improve. And then only then, from then, can you then begin to set goals to almost improve your own development. So when setting those goals, we need to look at whether they are smart. Now, in a coaching environment, in a management environment, leadership environment, these are the models that we use. So when you're setting your goals, the first thing is that the goals must be very specific. Now, what do I mean by that? So specific is, you know, I want to go to college to study GCSE English because I want to improve on my reading and writing. And ideally, I would like to, you know, and ideally that would help me with my job. That is specific. It's very specific. It details what you want to do and why you want to do it as well. Now, the next thing is, how can you measure that goal? So let's say, for example, if you were to go and study English, let's say, how do you measure it? How do you measure it? So you might measure it by taking several English tests or several exams or several practice exams. Then you will see what marks you get as well. And then you'll be able to see along the way what I am doing good, what I need to improve on, and what I can do to improve. Now, the next piece of the pie is you got to look at whether it's achievable and attainable, either or. So when I say achievable, I mean, if you look at the goal, you looked at how specific it is, you've looked at how you can measure it as well. For you to really see whether it's achievable for you or not, you have to be realistic about it as well. Be very realistic. Look at your options. Look at your resources as well. You want to look at, you know, you want to look at the time you have available. And only when you can do that would you be able to see whether it's achievable or not, or whether you can attain it yourself. And now when I say about being realistic, there are times where we set goals that are, dare I say, fantasy goals. So we think of goals that, you know, that are just fantasy, like, you know, it's not a good concept. However, if we took the time to sit down with somebody and look at what we want to do and make an action plan together, we may then find that our goals are very realistic. Because why? You know, there's certain things, you know, you've got a particular goal in mind, you've got the resources as well, you've got your options lined up, and you've put together an action plan. And so that will help you inform whether it is realistic or not. And the last thing about goal setting really is about time management. Time management. Is it time bound? So when you look at time, we're not looking at time as from 9 to 5 or 8 to 6. We're looking at time as a quantifiable measure. So if, let's say, the course starts in September this year and it finishes in July next year, time-wise, do you believe that you can achieve your qualification in that particular timeline? Because sometimes when you set a goal and you say you want to do GCSE English, if you don't set a time plan, or you don't set a date, or a date of when you want to start, or a date of when you want to finish it, or when you want to finish it by, 9 times out of 10, that goal is not going to be met, because you'll find yourself pushing it back until another month, or you may push it back a year or another 2 years, or even worse, you may not actually do it. So specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time bound. I now want to introduce another aspect of goal setting, and that is using a model that we use, which is called GROW, G-R-O-W. So, you know, so G stands for goal, R stands for resource, O stands for options, and W stands for wrap up. I like to call it action plan. So goal, you know, goal, it should be well formed. So you'll have to ask yourself certain questions about the goal. So, you know, like, yeah, you've got to ask yourself certain questions about the goal. Make sure it is well formed and it is well understood by everybody around you. And so you know how important that goal is to you. Now, you must look at the resources you have available as well. So resources could be anything from finances to people, technology, you know, education-wise, just resources that could help you meet your goals. And again, resources could be knowledge, experience, everything that you can think of that you can use as a resource. Now, options. So once you've looked at your goal and you've looked at your resources, you can then begin to start looking at your options. So what are my options? I could go to college. I could study online. I could ask my boss for some learnings. I could do some training. I could, you know, I could attend my class online. I could attend webinars. I could, you know, ask for a review, ask for some help and support. There's a lot of options available, and you just have to decide what options will be the right ones for you. And after you've done all of that, the last thing you want to do is to put together an action plan itself. So you will then list it in order of stuff. So I will do this and this and this and this and this by a particular date, and I will review it and so forth, moving forward from there. And that is how you can make it smart. So let's move swiftly on. Okay. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes left, guys. I think we've done good, haven't we? So I guess what I want to do now is just to have a brief summary and answer any questions that you guys may have. So if you put in the chat box any questions you may have, then yeah. So let's just summarize everything that we have learned today, really. So at the beginning we talked about do you want to, okay, I'm gonna so at the beginning we talked about, you know, if you've got any questions you can put them in the chat box, or if you want to unmute yourself quickly, just raise your hand as such. But at the beginning of the webinar, we talked about health and safety practitioners and some of their responsibilities in itself. And one of the things we said that they got to do risk assessments themselves, because risk assessments are really the lifeblood of the day-to-day running of their organization or their company itself. Now, we also said that, you know, within health and safety itself, there needs to be good communication, a good line of communication between yourself and other people within your company as well. We then said, you know, we then said that, you know, we then said that for good health and for, yeah, we then said for good health and safety now that, you know, we've got to look at procedures and you have to review those procedures as well. So really and truly, you know, guys, health and safety is a big thing, don't you agree? We then also looked at the aspect of personal development now. So within personal development, we said that, you know, as a health and safety practitioner itself, how can we develop ourselves? What are the things that we can do to develop ourselves? I believe you could, but we could take that up with admin after the webinar, and they will get back to you about the graduation ceremony as such. So yeah, we'll go back to admin and so forth, and I'll get that question answered for you in its fullest entirety. So yeah, where was I? We then talked about personal development itself, didn't we? And we said that for, you know, for personal development itself is that, you know, there's certain things they've got to do. So accountability is one thing you can do to build up your personal and professional development itself. You could do courses, you can reflect on your day-to-day work, your day-to-day learnings, you can share it with other people as well. Another thing that we said is that you can also, you know, create bubbles, create accountability groups for people who are in the same line of work that you are. because 9 times out of 10, those people may not work in the same building as you, and they have different ways of working as well. And so sometimes we can learn from people who have a different view of working, and then maybe that will help you in your job and in your role within health and safety, right? Now, if we then move swiftly on to, you know, we looked at the development that we can handle ourselves, haven't we, guys? So in the context of, we looked at goal setting, we looked at the SMART analysis, we looked at the SWOT analysis, and we looked at the GROW model as well. And we did say that, you know, a smart goal needs to be specific, it needs to be measurable, it needs to be attainable, it needs to be realistic, and it needs to be time bound as well. We also said that for you to have a proper goal, number one, it needs to be well thought out, well formed. So ask yourself questions about the goal. What would you like to do? When would you like to do it by? What would happen if it doesn't get done? Who could be involved in that goal? Who exactly could help you with that goal? Where do you see it going? When? How would you achieve that goal? So when you ask people those particular questions, it will help you create a well-formed goal. Then we said, you know, you got to look at your particular resources, and then you got to look at the options, and then and only then can you then begin to piece together the whole goal. And that is the development of a health and safety practitioner in its fullest entirety itself. And yeah, so that in itself is today's webinar, guys. And so, you know, I just want to wish you all the best of luck with your course, with your work and your exams coming up as well. And I just want to thank you all for being accountable to yourself and for turning up today and for learning another chapter and some more understanding and knowledge about health and safety, which will contribute to when you go into the world of health and safety as well. So if nobody has